I'm Melinda Elmborg and welcome to this video where I'm going to show you around the ultimate pitch deck template. So I was a previous VC investor at a VC fund here in Paris where we invested in Series A and seed startups, and in total it was a fund of $180 million. Since then, since 3 years back, I'm on a mission to democratize access to VC capital for all types of startup founders. Because what I saw when I was a VC investor, that raising money is really hard, and it's not always about having the best startup. And that is something that I want to change. And I want to make VC capital available for all founders. So other than shooting videos like this one, I am also having a blog where you can read lots of other articles on everything from building, growing, and raising capital for your startup. I'm also coaching founders individually, and I also do content packages which contains all the templates and the scripts that you need to raise capital or whatever it might be that is your next milestone. So, but let's get into this pitch deck. This pitch deck consists of 8 different types of slides. This is, as you see, a very short version of a pitch deck. It's because it is a teaser. A teaser is supposed to be like just a short pitch deck that is supposed to get the investor excited. It doesn't contain all the information that the investor needs or want, but it's just to get you through the door. And this teaser pitch deck, it answers all the first questions that the investor asks themselves. So what is the startup doing? That's the first thing they ask themselves when they open a pitch deck. So they want to see like which market are you on, which type of technology do you use. Next is that they want to see proof that you have succeeded in doing this. So that means showing metrics or other traction. And finally, they want to see how big could this be? Is this market any big? Like, because they might not know much about your market. So show any types of market size and business model. Finally, what is going to happen is that you're going to send them this short pitch deck. You're going to come for a meeting. And after that, you're going to send a longer pitch deck that contains all the information. But you want to split it up and have 2 separate pitch decks. So one short and sweet, and one that is really long and like contains lots of information. However, an investment is never done based on a pitch deck. It's always based on like a relationship and the trust that the investor will start feeling to you during the investment process. So this is just get into the door and start making a really good first impression. So, sorry, we go back here. This teaser pitch deck, you want it to be between 10 and 15 slides, not more. It should take you like 10 minutes max to present all the slides. You do not want to include long text because the investor spends like maximum 30 seconds or maybe 1 minute if you're lucky on your pitch deck. So that means that you cannot fill it with text, and you need to work more with visual elements and simplifying. In terms of the design, you want to work with your brand colors, your brand font. If you have an eye for design, go ahead, do it. Otherwise, option is to, if you have a friend who has an eye for design, if you have a designer that you worked with from before who's maybe designed your website or your product or whatever it might be, don't hesitate to send your pitch deck to that person to redesign it. It's worth the investment because you come up way more professional, but also a bit more modern and with a very well designed pitch deck. No matter your brand profile and whatever colors, main rule is just keep your deck very, very airy, like no cramped slides, please, because no one will anyway read that text. So, okay, we're moving into the first slide. So here we should, of course, put the logo, but second is to put a sexy one-liner, I call it. So compared to when you send a deck to a customer, you're probably gonna quickly explain like the big pain point that you're solving for your customer. This is not your company slogan that you can put here. This is another, like, that's why I call it a sexy one-liner. Because you want to make the investor like interested and like leaning in a bit, like, oh, this fits into my profile and my portfolio, and oh, this is really trendy and whatever, you know. So please use hype words if you can, like AI, deep tech, IoT, like all that cool stuff, and just really get the investor to dream a little bit with this one. Great. And then we're moving into the problem slide. So before explaining the solution that you offer, we want to set the scene a little bit, especially if you are solving a problem that maybe normal people don't know about, and that can be very industry specific. So then you want to be super clear why there's any interest to solving to do the product that you're doing. So let's set the scene, explaining why should the investor care about your product. Instead of talking about like very customer specific pain points, again, think like a global mindset, very macro view, because that is the way the investor is thinking. They are looking at the complete like global market and like what trends are happening right now, and what problems are to be solved in society. So try to connect to one of those more like global macro problems if you can, and use lots of data. That is something that a lot of founders miss out on. But you want to use data, and you want to have like this little pie chart as we have here, or other types of charts and statistics. Is great because I really remember this. Like, I'm going to remember this pie chart forever and connect it to your company. The data can come from either market research sources, or it can come from your interviews with customers, or with any survey that you maybe did with the customers at some point. And you can also present it like this. So here is data coming from an example survey, and make sure to put your sources in the bottom. But definitely aim for having some kind of chart rather than just text, because people just don't read this. All right, moving into the solution. So the best way to explain your solution is with this 1, 2, 3 process, and showing like very simplified, like what are people doing with your product, and of course visualizing it very clearly, so you can see like what does your user interface look like. So you can really get a feeling for how you solve the problem that you just talked about. So this is a nice slide because it's extremely straightforward. However, it doesn't apply for all kinds of startups. I mean, especially if you have like a SaaS platform that is supposed to do so many different things and have a lot of features, then you might want to aim for this type of slide instead. So here you have a tip, like an example of a SaaS business. Today they do just patient bookings. Like they have one feature that works, and then they're looking to add all of these other features in the future. So then you can aim for this one instead. Then next, we want to talk about metrics, and we want to show proof that we know what we are talking about. So the best of the best is having a growth chart, and that is pointing upwards and shows you like a really exciting growth. You want to have a nice shape here. However, I invite you to be a little bit creative about which growth chart you pick. It doesn't have to be revenue. It can also be the number of actions taken, or number of orders, or number of clicks, or number of downloads, or number of something. Like what is it that people do on your platform, like count the number of times that happened. Or you can have the number of active users or active customers. So for example, you can have the same number of customers, but they use your product more and more and more because they love your product. Then you can have a customer chart that is straight, and then you can instead use the number of orders or activities by your customers that is like increasing. So don't hesitate to engineer this a little bit to show your company from its best side. Benchmarks here is that for a seed round, you want your startup to grow with at least 10% month over month, preferably more. Other tips here is that you can also group the data to look at quarters and show quarterly growth. Or if you're a B2C company or like an app or something, it's very popular to do week over week. So here's an example for a marketplace or e-commerce. Here you find an example for a B2B SaaS. So here it's like enterprise sales. So we can show the logos of the companies that we sign with. And it's great also to show the forecast if you have already signed contracts that are going to come into effect in a couple of months. So you want to show that. And here is a consumer app with the monthly active users. If you don't have any of these like typical growth charts, because maybe you have been focusing on just building your product and making it the best it can be, and you haven't had a lot of customer growth, then I can recommend you to instead present some other metric that can be a flattened retention curve, for example, or anything showing the investors that people start using your product and they love it so much, so they don't stop using it, or they use it more and more often even. If you don't have that either because you don't have any users yet, the last option is to brag about some kind of traction that you have seen. So the best is to have a wait list, or maybe you have done a bunch of interviews. And then you can put some quotes as well from there. All right, moving on to the market. So there's a framework that all the investors use and know about, and it's just like the mainstream framework, and it's called the Tam Sam Som. So it stands for total addressable market, serviceable addressable market, and serviceable obtainable market. And it's just a way of segmenting down and explaining to the investor which is the market that we are focusing on right now. So TAM, the total addressable market, that is going to be like the total healthcare market, or here, like the global number of physicians in the world. I mean, we're never going to go after, and we're never going to have the entire market of physicians in the world, but we want to put it in here. And then we have SAM. So that then we cut off one layer, and we get. So, for example, here we go from physicians to, okay, but we focus only on specialist surgeons. Or maybe you focus only on a specific geographic market, or maybe you have healthcare as the top one, and then you maybe have digital healthcare as the second one. And then finally, SOM, that is one step down. So this is pretty clearly your focus that you have at the moment. So here I put number of specialists surgeons in the US. I think I can't see because my face is in the way. Anyway, but it could be like digital health in Europe or in US or wherever you are based. So cut away one more piece. Like, so you have the TAM is like the complete cake, and then you take like 1/3 of the cake or 1/4 of the cake, and that is your sum, and then your sum is going to be a very small part of the cake that you can realistically aim to go after in the next 2-3 years. You can either show your market in terms of values, in terms of dollars, or you can show it in the number of transactions, or the number of users, or number of potential customers. So here it's based on the number of potential users. Bonus is if your market is also growing, because that makes the investor really excited. So make sure to put those growth numbers in there. Okay, moving on to the business model. So here's where you show how you earn money on your startup. And if you have like a lot of different plans and a lot of different ways of doing that, I recommend you to simplify it a bit and take some averages. So here we have like, okay, let's say we have 2 plans for these physicians, and so we took the 200,000 from the other slide, and we split them up. So some are having the more expensive plan, and some are having the cheaper plan. And what's important here is that we get to 100 million in, you can see here, 100 million yearly revenue. That's what's important, that we get to that number at least. Because if you have 100 million, that's a magical number, because if you have that, you are probably valued at $1 billion or more dollars, which means you're a unicorn. And that's what most investors are looking for, at least VC investors. And then we have here Airbnb. So this is, I borrowed that slide from them because I think they're showing this really well. So they tell you how many trips they are expecting to be done with Airbnb, the average fee. So, like, of course, Airbnb has like a more complicated model where like a commission is for the sellers, the guests and the hosts, and then they have some extra charge or whatever. But here they have just taken the average fee that they see per stay. So that's it. And then they show how that gets them to a $200 million GMV. No, revenue, sorry. 200 million revenue. Cool. Moving on, and we're coming to the team slide. So this is Really important. And here is something that so many investors miss because they put their faces, they put their photos, and then they put their, Albert Sampson, CEO, Anna Carlos, CPO, and blah, blah. But they don't tell you they don't share what they've done or why the investor should care about them as people, like why they want to invest in you as people. So that is why I recommend you to always include 4 different things about each person in your team or any advisor that you want to include. So the first one is to include the photo. So we have this visual part that is so important. And then we have the role and the name. And then we have any other information, any achievements that you can brag about. So it doesn't need to be like here, that scale the business line from 1 million to 50 million in revenue or whatever. I mean, it can be that you were managing this and this many millions, or you were managing a team of 30 people, or whatever it can be. But it's really good if you have like numbers that you can share. And number 4 is to have these logos. Again, you need to visually show the investor. So it's great if you have famous logos that they will recognize. Of course, that is always better, but it's okay if you don't. This is like an ideal case here, what we see, but the investor does not receive many pitch decks that look like this one. So don't worry, like, please brag about yourself. Tell the investor who you are, because they can't read your mind, especially not through a pitch deck. And if you have a slide that looks like this, if you have like really known logos on your pitch deck, you have a lot of industry experience, or you're a serial entrepreneur, then put this team slide, you can put it very high up, like as a second slide or something. Don't hesitate to do that. Okay, our last slide, it's the ask. So here you can be super brief, just saying like, we are looking to raise $1 million to reach 5,000 customers, or to reach 100K ARR, or whatever it might be that you want to do. So just be very brief. I mean, you don't need to explain like everything of the entire split on where you want to spend the money, because that is a discussion that you can take in the meeting. Great. And then put your logo again in the end, and and your email address, or any way they can contact you on. Investors, they all know each other, so they tend to like send decks in between each other. So make sure that there's a way to contact you, so that any other investor that might find your pitch deck can actually contact you. Great. And so I invite you to click the link below to download this entire pitch deck template. So you have the slides that you need to create your pitch deck template that's going to get the investor to say yes, and you're going to get through that door and into the investor meeting, so you can raise the money you need faster. So just click down below here, click the link, and you will get the entire pitch deck template, which you can copy and edit, so you can finish your pitch deck faster. So I'm looking forward to seeing you there. Bye-bye.